What's up, Mark? How you doing,
Good,
man?
man. Thank you. Thank you for having me on here.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Can you tell our audience about you?
I'm Mark. I work for Safe Children's Coalition in partnership with the Department of Juvenile Justice, and I am a behavioral counselor, and I work with kids who are in foster care or who are at risk. Most of the kids that come in are usually troubled youth. They have some kind of either substance abuse, criminal record, or are in the foster care system and are in need of placement. And yeah, and I've been a lifelong athlete. Just started jiu-jitsu probably 3, 4 months.
4 months ago.
4 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So welcome,
Yeah.
newbie.
Yeah.
So what you did before jiu-jitsu though that you were pretty high level in was swimming, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about how training for your swim meets and training to be a dominant athlete in swimming. How does that compare to like jiu-jitsu training?
So with anything in life, anything you want to be successful in or you want to take to an elite level, you have to be incredibly disciplined. You have to be, very consistent. I mean, there's so much structure that goes into forming an elite athlete. And from my story, I mean, 5 a.m. workouts were a daily basis, 2 a-days, plus strength conditioning, which was not counted in those two practices, was a key. And then I was always eating very clean, having that good camaraderie because we had a group of like-minded individuals where we wanted to win nationals. That was our goal as a team. And
you had a very competitive
I
culture
mean,
driven towards success, right?
just to riff on the culture of the team. I mean, if you were going slow, if you were in front of me and you were going slow,
Yeah.
it is perfectly acceptable of me to grab you by the ankle, grab you by the shoulder, throw you underneath me, and me to swim over you. That was expected, and that was the culture, and it created a bunch of ruthless people. And obviously, today's society is a little softer now, and that would probably be
we can expand on
you'd
that.
probably get yelled at by a coach, but that was expected of us, and they wanted us to be a shark pit. I mean, I swam for the Sarasota Sharks. That was the culture. We created a shark pit, and only the fastest or strongest survived, and then we brought everyone else to that level. So, but yeah, we always had a mentality of everything we did was for the team. So, if you skipped a practice, well, that counted against the team. You weren't being for the team. If you were hungover, well, you probably get kicked off. And we had standards to where you couldn't miss a practice. Missing a morning practice was totally unacceptable. And all of us were held to that standard.
Absolutely. So just to ask you, I have about 120 students right now. Do you know how many of them are adult competitors?
Oh,
Zero.
Zero.
Yeah. Right? And that's because if you're not approaching it from the perspective of I want to do my best to improve and, dominate at a really high level, then I'm going to treat you as a hobbyist. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear. Most people that do jiu-jitsu are hobbyists, and they have other things that are higher priorities than getting extreme competitive success. That's a very small percentage of people, But if you are one of those people that is driven towards having a high competitive success in jiu-jitsu, then my standards for you are going to be extremely rigorous. I'm not going to have you, pulling each other by the ankles if you're swimming or whatever the jiu-jitsu equivalent of that may be. But certainly, I would expect you to never skip practice. I would expect you to be watching tape on your own. I would expect you to always be doing positional drilling to work on your weaknesses and things like that. So, there is something to the structure that I provide in my school. I have a curriculum, that we do 4 days a week, and then Fridays is my question and answer, which is a little bit more open for you guys to ask and learn whatever you guys would like. But yeah, the structure is super important. And it's not just for highly competitive, successful athletes too. It's for any hobbyist that just wants to improve their skills, but maybe not commit so much time that it becomes like a cornerstone of their life.
Yeah.
You still need structure to make sure that that person is improving. So
Exactly.
that's why I do 2 lessons per week in my fundamentals curriculum. It's like, look, if you're somebody that works 9 to 5, you have a family, you have to provide for them, and you can only take 2 nights out of your week.
Yeah.
Well, those 2 nights, we're going to be doing the lessons that you need in order to get better, and I'm going to structure the training as best I can to make you get better. So one thing I will say, I made a previous video somewhat touching on this. I called it tactical bathing.
Yeah.
Like and you mentioned the wider culture.
Yeah.
Not everyone has a high level of mental resilience, right?
Yeah.
And so for the people that have a very low level of mental resilience, that would whine and just not be able to go through the rigors of, for example, what you did for your training. My approach to it is I'm going to gradually push you to be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
But I don't want to push them too far, too fast, because then they either get completely discouraged, dissuaded, or they just they just become even mentally weaker because they're like, man, I can't deal with the pressure of this. So there's a science to it.
Yeah. We had a pretty similar thing. So in order for us to, because we had a very small men's team. I mean, you're talking about the team that went to nationals for the girls' side was like 40 women.
Wow.
And we had about 12 to 15 guys go to nationals, which is very small compared to the women's side.
Right.
In order to bring some of those weaker swimmers up, like we had to kind of like incentivize and kind of bring them in slowly. Like, hey, why don't you swim with the top level program, once or twice a week, and then they'll start coming and they'll see like dramatic improvement, and it's almost like a drug. Like you want to keep doing it because winning is addictive. I mean, it's a human basis. Everyone wants to win. I don't see anyone who was like, I'm okay with losing. Like, no, that's not not a survival instinct.
I tell people I hate competing, but I love winning.
Yeah.
My love of winning when I've competed supersedes my dislike of competing.
See, I hated training. Like in my teams with Taylor, I hated training, like practice and training and stuff like that. But I loved to compete. Like that was my jam, my butter, my peanut butter, nuts, crackers, all that stuff. Like, but to go back to incentivizing, like we had the people who went to nationals. We had this coveted black and gold shirt that only if you went to nationals you received.
Yeah.
So make you like elite, where everyone else had the standard like yellow and black shirt to distinguish like you weren't at that level yet.
Yeah.
And everyone had that goal of like, I'm going to get my black shirt this year. Like, just like, training to a different level, in Jiu-Jitsu, you're training for a different belt.
Yes. I was just about to say, it's like almost the exact same like incentive structure.
Yeah. So that's basically how we ran our program. And like I said before, like everything we did was for the team. So when you got to that level, there was a higher expectation of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to be clear, you wouldn't give someone that shirt just to be nice.
No, you had to earn it.
You had to earn it. Okay,
yeah.
Good. So in Jiu-Jitsu, guys, it's the same thing. You don't give out belts to be nice, okay? You have to earn it. You do that once, and it undermines the entire meritocratic system for everybody else.
I mean, we had to earn that shirt every year, though.
Oh, man. So you can't just get a brown belt, for instance, which is what I am now, and just, sit and coast and never do anything with it. Okay, fair enough. So maybe we should bring demotions back into the mainstream.
I mean,
I'm kidding, guys. I don't actually believe that. I'm just messing around.
Yeah.
But that's awesome. I definitely like the highly meritocratic culture, and I'm sure the practices were brutal, like you said.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we're talking, like, just for example, like for 4 years of swimming, just high school, I did 10,000 meters a practice, which is close to 6 miles.
Yeah. Holy crap.
So
that's a 10K.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's serious.
So 12 miles a day for 4 years is your body's not supposed to be able to do that kind of yardage, which leads to like micro tears, and you're supposed to be able to take care of yourself, which the research or technology or training behind it wasn't up to par what we know now. I mean, if I can go back and do the stuff I know now, I think I'd be a far better.
Yeah, you do it
swimmer.
differently.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you say that. You know, I tell people in jiu-jitsu, for instance, like, unless you're on steroids and you recover quickly. But, you know, most people, you shouldn't be doing like hard training to complete exhaustion more than twice a week.
Yeah.
Like everything else should be technical improvement. So in swimming, would you say it's about the same, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you would take a break. Like, so swimming, you train in peaks and valleys. You build up your training mileage. And even throughout the week, I mean, Monday was always going to be a hard practice. Tuesday was always going to be a hard practice. Wednesday, you're pretty tired, but you're still going to be able to swim fairly decent times. Thursday, I would say you're complete shit. Your body just can't handle it anymore. So like Thursday would be like a recovery practice, or we'd have like a recovery practice built in even at the college level. And then Friday was Fast Friday, and Saturday we just kind of cleaned up whatever was missing on Fast Friday.
What's Fast Friday?
So Fast Friday was like our live rolls on Friday.
Yeah.
Fast Friday was you race. And
okay.
So
Gotcha.
you either do your events or you do some type of sprint work or even like a mock. Like I wasn't a distance swimmer, but the distance swimmers would do like a broken mile, which would be basically 150 yards at a time, and you get like a certain amount of rest, which was a short period of recovery, and you do another 150 yards equaling to a mile.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, pretty brutal stuff, man. Very cool. So if you're doing a 10K, I mean, how much do you have to swim for like a triathlon?
Far less than that.
Far less than that,
mean,
right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's
like
serious.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Ironman is what, like 2.8, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
2.8 miles. I mean, if you're swimming 6 miles.
So you're swimming at least twice that.
Yeah. And then I mean, swimming itself has the mile as an event. I never did it because I would cherry pick the shit out of it, but that was just me. Like,
yeah. So when you work with kids, and I'm interested in this because I work with kids as well, but obviously like most of the kids I work with are reasonably well adjusted.
Yeah.
You know, obviously I do have some kids with behavioral issues, and part of the reason I have them in class is so that I can help fix those behavioral issues, you know. But in particular, like, what do you see with these kids that needs to be improved, and kind of like what led to their current situation?
So a lot of these kids make poor decisions based on, you know, lack of structure at home, not doing extracurricular activities, low confidence, trying to fit in with the wrong crowd of people. And then, you know, there's some outliers where like the kid's just an asshole. Like, I mean, it happens. But what I try to do is I try to give them structure. I mean, I have expectations. I'm like, hey, like, I'm going to read out this contract because you have to voluntarily be placed in our program. I'm going to read out this contract. Stop me at any time where you don't agree with this. And basically, like, it's, you know, if you touch or strike another staff member or a resident, if you steal anything, if you have any illegal items in your possession, like, you'll be prosecuted to the full extent. And like, you have to meet the required anger management classes, the family counseling, and the solo counseling with our psychologist. And you basically earn your privileges as you go on. So it's a family setting. So like, we have dinner together. We have you know, a living space where they, you know, either if they're in school, they have a tutor, they can watch TV, they can play video games, but they have to earn those privileges. And usually they don't have a problem with it. It's the kids that, you know, like, I want to do whatever I want. I'm 16 years old and I'm basically an adult and I can run the streets.
What age range do you deal with typically?
10 to 17.
Okay.
It's very rare for us to get like a 10 or 11-year-old with severe behavioral problems. It's usually between like 13 to 15.
Yeah.
Where,
after puberty.
Yeah. Which is, you know,
more testosterone.
More testosterone. I mean, I've always said the most aggressive species on the planet is the 19-year-old male.
Yeah,
so,
I remember you saying that.
So,
I was like, you know what?
It's pretty accurate,
yeah.
right? So, but yeah, like, giving them that structure and that expectation, I hold them to that. I mean, they usually thrive if they follow the program step by step and do all the requirements that are needed. I've had a couple of kids turn around and never come back to the shelter, which is awesome.
That's great.
And I had a couple that I've had to do 1 or 2 cycles through, which is like a 30-day, period, just to reinforce those habits, because a lot of them, like they know how to skate by. So like they know what's right and wrong. You inherently, I feel like everyone knows what right and wrong is. It's just that you choose to do whatever you want to do. They kind of need refreshers and say like, you know how to act here, but when you're out there, there's so much temptation, so much, freedom out there. You have to kind of stay disciplined, have that kind of structure.
So you're trying to teach them to be responsible with their freedom,
yeah.
right? And that's a point I bring up a lot when you're talking about kids. Is like, kids are going to be adults eventually, and you should treat them as if that's going to happen, because it will.
Yeah.
So gradually, as kids get older, they should be given more freedom, yes, but also more responsibilities, right? So that once they're a fully grown adult, they can use that ultimate freedom responsibly, right? It's like, you don't want to go too far in one direction. You don't want to be the completely libertarian parent that's like, well, my kid can just do whatever they want, and let them self-express however they want, right? That person, when they become 18, is not going to have any structure. They'll have never dealt with structure. They'll have no idea how to not give in to impulse, basically, and just do whatever is best for their short-term interest, but detrimental to their long-term interest. You go too far in the other direction, you get the helicopter parent that gives them tons of responsibilities but no freedom. And then once that kid finally has their freedom, they're going to be like, well, screw all this structure. I'm going to go do whatever they want. So in a lot of ways, you'll get a similar outcome. So you want to have balance. A lot of responsibility, limited freedom when they're young, or let me rephrase, less responsibility but much more limited freedom when they're young, evolving into more responsibility and more freedom when they're older.
Yeah, I agree. Just having that structure too. It develops them differently. That's why I always push, like, for any of my kids, like what interests you? Like, there has to be something other than like video games or just smoking dope with your friends that motivates you and drives you. So, it could be art, it could be music. I mean, for me, like, I prefer sports because that's something that I'm so familiar with.
Yeah.
And it gives you a kind of structure. I'm like, hey, like you do this, like this is how you get your outlet out, like you get your endorphins up and you feel good about yourself and boost your confidence. You have this thing to look forward to every day, and it's a goal that you can work at. Yeah,
I think every kid should play sports. It's detrimental to a kid if they've never done sports.
Yeah.
I would say it doesn't all need to be like jiu-jitsu or wrestling.
I would say for kids especially, like, have them play multiple sports.
Yeah. Agreed.
And then when they're older, they can narrow it down to 1 or 2.
Yeah, I would say, especially when they're young, have them do a lot of a team sport and individual sport, because you want them to be part of a team and be able to work together with other kids and towards a common goal, which is to win. And you also want them to have a situation in which they can only rely on themselves. Yeah. And should they lose, it's only their fault.
Yeah. That teaches you so many life lessons. I mean, that was one of the biggest takeaways from my swimming career, because I could control everything I did. Mm-hmm. And I had if I lost a race, I had no one to blame but myself.
Yeah.
And if I won a race, I got to keep all the credit. It's like I put in the work. I deserve this moment. No one can take that moment away from me. So.
Yep, agreed. And I love teaching my little kids, and in the beginning when they first start out, a lot of the times when they lose in these grappling exchanges, they'll cry. Right? Yeah. Why? Why do they cry? Well, because even a 5- and 6-year-old kid knows when they got completely physically dominated and how much that sucks. Yeah. And how much that's completely on them. Yeah. And it's a very ego-destroying moment, both for adults but also for kids. And kids need to have those ego-destroying moments, where it's like, man, I don't know. I don't know anything. I don't know what to do. I'm not very good at this. It's like, yeah, you're not. But guess what? If you persist through that failure, then you will eventually become good. So that's a good lesson from any sport. And
exactly.
it's why you should, at some point in a kid's life, stick them with the sport for a long time with a good coach.
Yeah.
Get them to the point where they suck at something in the beginning, and then they achieve a decent level of competence in that thing eventually.
I
that's
agree.
a big life lesson there.
And that's that. I feel like that's with anything too. Like, just have them stick with something for at least 1 or 2 years to watch them, struggle and then strive towards the end. So
yeah, agreed. When it comes to the kids that you have in your program, what kind of things in their home life do you think are typical of the kids that come into your system? Because
a lot of them,
I think a lot of the problems that kids have in their lives is like poor parenting habits at home.
Yeah, it's poor parenting habits at home. A lot of times it's single parent homes. We have a lot of kids that they don't have father figures in the house, which is it's huge because I mean, even though I have a stepfather and he raised me since I was 6, if he was removed from the picture and it was solely my mother raising me with the help of my grandfather, I don't think I'd be the person I am today.
Agreed. Yeah. I have my mom and dad, and they divorced. They divorced when I was younger, and I only saw my dad every other weekend and once during the week.
Yeah.
So that's that. I mean, it's a lot better than nothing, and my dad was a great role model for me in many ways, but having my stepfather in the picture was a great guiding role.
Yeah.
That had I not had, I would be much more of a shithead than I am now. So
for me, my biological father wasn't really in my life for most of my life, and then the times that he was, we didn't get along, and then finally, I was such a pain in the ass because I was just like I don't really need you. At 13, he relinquished custody of me, and then, which made me pissed off because I felt like I wasn't wanted, and I kind of just funneled it into sports.
Yeah.
Which, at that same time, I was going through puberty, got all that testosterone, and I just everything kind of meshed into one awesome mixture of badass athleticism, and it kind of just took my athletic career kind of took off from there, and then he tried to coast off my success when I was 21 in college, because I was I qualified for Olympic trials for the second time, and he was like, oh yeah, I've raised him since he was a kid, and I'm like, you're a stranger to me. So it's a weird dichotomy, how this childhood, I wouldn't say tragedy, but this childhood trauma could fuel something into something great. And my stepfather, he did a wonderful job raising me and kind of showing that I was loved and I was needed and I was wanted, and how he was also a coach. So he treated me like his son and an athlete at the same time because he wanted what was best for me.
Dude, I think there's a lot of similarities, man.
Yeah.
I really do. Between what coaches do and what parents do, specifically father figures too. It's if you really care about your kid and you want them to be successful, then the goal is not to be nice to them and to be their friend.
No.
The goal is to tell them when they're messing up and correct bad behavior and reward good behavior.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, it's honestly like training a dog.
Yeah.
You reward good behavior, you punish bad behavior. And so when I'm teaching my kids, obviously I punish bad behavior.
Yeah.
But once I've dealt the punishment, whether I like physical punishments,
Yeah.
I like squats, push-ups, wall sits, that kind of stuff. Once the physical punishment is over, my affect goes from negative to neutral.
Yeah.
Right? And then from there on in the class, I have a neutral disposition towards them. I encourage them when they're doing techniques right and when they're doing things correct. So just because they messed up once doesn't mean I'm going to have a negative predisposition for them the rest of class. It's I'm just going to punish you, and then once you're done, you're going to come back into the fold, and I'm going to treat you just like everybody else.
And that's how I do my job. I don't have any favorites with the kids that I work with. A lot of the kids are there sometimes for extended time, and or they're repeat residents. And so they know my personality. And I always tell them, I was like, look, if you're here the second time, obviously you didn't learn much. So it's going to be harder for me I'm going to make it harder for you because obviously you need the extra push.
Yeah.
So, I tell them point blank, like, look, you need to stop doing this. You need to start going to school. It's like, you guys have a bright future. You just have to put it in your hands. I mean,
so based on our talks before, though, you don't only tell them about how things can go right. You also tell them how things are going to go wrong if they continue to mess up.
Yeah, I mean, 'cause, prior to this job, I was in law enforcement, so I've seen the worst that society could put out, and I see how that 15-year-old kid can dive down that rabbit hole and become the next criminal.
Yeah.
I mean, those 3 years are crucial in that kid's life where he can pivot his trajectory tremendously. I mean, it only takes one incident of someone who cares for you and like sees potential in you to change who you're going to be.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And a lot of people that I've listened to, including Jocko, that were in the military said, like, I was at a tipping point between like going into the military and serving my country and just becoming a criminal. And in a sense that makes sense because 95% of violent crime is committed by men. And it's because when you look at men's predisposition towards physical aggression, it's like a standard deviation higher than women. So if you took your average man versus average woman, the average man would only be like 65% more likely to be more aggressive. But that means because of the statistical distribution, if you go all the way to the end, who are the most extreme, like aggressive people? Well, it's almost all men, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. That can be channeled in a positive way. I know very aggressive men that are not criminals, and they lead very productive lives. So.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't there a saying? A good man is an aggressive man who has his rage under control.
Yeah, I think. That's something Jordan Peterson said, or similarly, like a good man is a monster who has that under voluntary control. He said, if you don't have the ability to commit harm against others, then you're not really a moral person. You're just kind of subject to whatever forces surround you. So a moral person is someone that has power to do harm and violence and chooses not to. If you don't have the ability to do violence, then your morality is irrelevant.
And I like to talk about like how as we're talking about that, a lot of times I think too, in my job at least, the kids respect someone who's more physically fit and capable than someone who isn't. And it comes down to just you're not going to mess with the person who can kick your ass. I mean, command presence is huge.
Tell me a little bit about command presence, because you were in law enforcement, and that's like an important concept for law enforcement.
Yeah, it's like, so, I mean, if you are out of shape and you can't run a mile without stopping, you can't do push-ups, you can't pull yourself up on a ledge, like, you're not helping yourself. I mean, I'm 200 pounds. I would like somebody who's like 225 to pull me out of a fire. I'd like somebody who's physically capable of dragging 200 pounds 50 yards out of something.
Yeah.
And
so you don't want obese firefighters that can't.
Well, most firefighters are in relatively good shape.
Excellent shape.
I train
a few firefighters. They're in excellent shape.
It's not to rag on police officers, but it's mostly day shift guys. But they are like they stop taking care of themselves, and I get it. Like, the job is stressful. Fast food is easy, but you have to take time to take care of it. I mean, you don't build an army of, like, the Spartans wouldn't be so efficient if they didn't have their training regimen and their discipline. I mean, they were professional soldiers. So why wouldn't you be
every single person in the population was,
So why wouldn't you be a profession in everything you do? So when I was in law enforcement, I took great pride in my physical ability because I knew one day it was going to potentially save someone. It was going to prevent crime.
Yeah.
And it was going to help me apprehend criminals. Why wouldn't you take advantage of that? And you know, in my job, like the kids do get hands-on sometimes, but I easily deter it because like I look like I can kick their ass.
Yeah.
So they don't want to try anything in front of me, and that's huge.
Yeah. You know, speaking about 19-year-old males being the most dangerous people, right? They're also, I find, the people that respect a strong masculine presence the most over any other kind of presence, you know. And I think that goes back to the importance of fathers, you know, of having a strong father that that you not only respect, but that clearly is looking out for your well-being. Like they're exercising their authority for the sake of helping you and not for the sake of lording it over you, you know. And not obviously that's an important distinction, you know. But yeah, having that strong masculine presence is really important. I think we're losing that quite a bit, you know. I mean, single motherhood is on the rise in America.
Yeah, it's
you know? And
you know, having fathers absent in the home is a huge detrimental to, you know,
it's literally
society,
something it's literally something that collapses societies, you know. And these trends, they take multiple generations to play out, you know. So back in the 1950s, you know, there were a lot of things going on in America that were horrible during that time. But one of the things that was not was how stable the nuclear family was, you know, and how there was almost always a mother and a father in the home. But once you start attacking that, or, you know, diminishing the importance of it, and it just becomes commonplace where people are coming out of households without a father. Sometimes without a mother. That's also not good. Right? Single parents on either side is not good. But most of the time it's without a father, you know, and it's because, unfortunately, you know, women choose terrible partners, you know, and the men themselves are terrible and don't take responsibility, you know. So we need a cultural push towards making sure that that doesn't happen, because this is literally something that destroys societies. You know, if you have, especially these men, if you have these men that haven't been raised by fathers, you know, like you said, they're the ones that become criminals and don't have respect for the system, you know, and it's like, why would they if the system produced?
And they almost always have zero respect for women. Like I've seen it multiple times where they'll square up on one of the female staff, and if I correct them, it's like a beat dog. Like their ears are pinned back, tail between their legs. They won't even make eye contact with me, and it's a very noticeable change. Do
you think it's just because they don't respect that woman's ability to do harm to them, or is it something else?
I think it's a little bit of not respecting them to do harm to them, and it's how they treat their mother. I mean, it's almost a direct correlation to that.
I see. That makes sense. Yeah, and that's unfortunate because that's the only person in their lives a lot of
going to give a shit
about
them.
trying to do their best, you know. But it's so hard. It's so hard as a single parent to do it by yourself, you know. And so if someone is a single mother out there, I think, you know, the best thing you can do is to get your kid in a structured activity where they have a positive male role model. Whether they're a girl or a boy, I think that would be very helpful, you know. And it's not a substitute at all for having a father, but at least they'll have some positive male
influences, which is it's huge. So.
Well, thanks for coming, man. I think we touched on some important topics.
Appreciate it.
I did want to talk a little bit more about, you know, getting more people to have that philosophy of like, I want to look good and represent my profession well, you know, physically, aesthetically. But, you know, maybe we'll bring you back next time.
All right.
By the way, you have a podcast, right?
Yeah. My podcast is Florida's Fittest Podcast. It's with another one of our Jiu-Jitsu practitioners, Mark Manning. So, and D-Rod from Wolfpack BJJ. So we all three of us do a podcast every so once in a while, and it's to leave a legacy of what we learned in our lives as athletes and to give to you guys, because I mean we were stumbling in the dark trying to figure all this stuff out. And if you guys can have a cheat code, like that's going to be an ultimate game changer.
Awesome. So, well, thanks for talking with me, man. Appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Make sure you share this video. Make sure you subscribe if you're new. Click that notification bell. That way you guys get notified every time we have a new video. And let me know who you'd like to see up next. If you're in the Sarasota area and there's someone you'd like to see me talk to, then I'd be happy to talk to them. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care. Have a wonderful day.